What's up? Welcome back to another episode of How Not to Suck at Marketing. I'm your host, Quincy Johnson, joined by my co-host and
Tony Boudreau, also known as TB, the other goat.
TV, the next goat, the other goat, the only goat that remains.
Yes.
And so, what's been up? Let's start off with a check-in.
Yeah. So checking in over here, everything's been fine in my world. There's been a lot of stuff that's been happening lately. For all my Texas fans, there's definitely been a lot of crazy weather. So I'm kind of praying that it's gonna get better in the near future. Hopefully we don't have another sleet/snow thing that's coming up in the next coming weeks. So, but yeah, something that's we've all kind of seen, and if you're at least connected to the internet or to the TV, I hope we've all seen what's happened yesterday with between like Ukraine and Russia, and so it's really horrifying to see this unfold, and I'm really sad about the events that happened yesterday. So yeah, there's honestly not that much I could say, but I feel for them, and as someone who's the daughter of parents that have immigrated here, that have been in war-torn countries, it's not it leaves a kind of a permanent scar on the community and everyone that comes from that sort of scenario. But
Yeah. Wow. It's really kind of hard to say, hey, everything's going fine with me, and like kind of ignore like everything that's going on in the news too. Like it's interesting how it's affecting people. We actually had a little bit of a conversation with my 7-year-old over the dinner table last night, and he was just like, I don't understand why people fight and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely something that I think is impacting a lot of people. And like, not to even be like funny about it, but there's a satirical sort of meme that went around that said, I don't think I can handle another like big event again. Like, obviously we're coming out of the pandemic, and now we're like witnessing like these things. It's like, how many like big events can I live through? Like, I don't know how many I could live through.
yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have to agree with that. It's like yeah, I mean, we had the pandemic, we had this interesting, at least for the US, I want to say, like these candidates that our president kind of making some interesting statements and kind of making us look a particular way globally. And then the whole thing that had happened January 6th, just there was just a whole brigade of like things, and Black Lives Matter too. That was a big thing that had happened, and now it's like it's just been a culmination. I think someone had said, why are these things all happening now? It's like, well, I don't know if the pandemic was essentially the fire to light the match, but it definitely had sped up a lot of the things and shined a lot of light on existing problems that maybe we weren't aware of necessarily before. So yeah, it's been just an interesting perspective that I heard of.
That's big. And so for me, what's been going on, what's been up is definitely the Texas weather. It's been really interesting. My kid has now had 3 snow days. Oh, and I feel bad telling people like, because I work with people in Canada, I work with people like in other parts of the world, and like when they add like small talk, like, how's the weather? I'm like, man, it's super cold here, and they're like, oh, it's -5 here. Like, what is it there? And I'm like, 30.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's not cold.
Yeah. It's all about perception, right?
Yeah. Which leads me to kind of our topic today. What a great segue. This is only episode 2, and like we're already like feeding off of each other. So you had brought up this blind man elephant theory, which is actually really intriguing. And so when you explained it at first, I had never heard of it. And afterwards, it got kind of like all my wheels turning, right? So I think I'd love for you to kind of like go into that, and then we can talk about like how it relates to kind of just everything.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I had actually first heard about the blind man elephant theory not too long ago, and what my interpretation of what the blind man elephant theory is essentially is, so it's actually based off of a story. It's there's an elephant and then it's in a forest, or at least you could just imagine that. And there are seven blind men in the forest, and they're all around the elephant, and they all touch different parts of the elephant. I think one says, "This is a wall for sure," when touching an elephant. Another one touches the tusk, and they're like, "Man, this is, I don't know, this is like a piece of art or something, a sculpture." Another one touches the tail and thinks this is like some sort of like brush or plant. So the whole premise of this is essentially, you know, there multiple people are coming to different conclusions about the same animal. And so how does that fit into like everyday life? You know, what Quincy had said earlier about the the weather, it's all about perception. And each of us have, you know, different perceptions about, or can come to different conclusions about the same exact thing. Um, you know, and so I think that's why it's so important in marketing that if, you know, if you were to sell something essentially, you have to be really cognizant that the way that you're delivering it is very deliberate. Otherwise, it's open to interpretation. Granted, you're always going to get different people that interpret it differently, but you know, that's just how it is. And yeah, I don't know if that's something that you necessarily agree with or disagree with, Quincy, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I think that's big. Like I wrestle a lot with perceptions on in life in general, right? So, but I think it is kind of crucial to like everything that we do in marketing in general, right? Like, so if you think of like how are you trying to target an audience and stuff like that as you're building out, you're a really big proponent on like not relying heavily on personas, right? Like because like it's a like a harsh generalization all the time, like it seems, right? And so I think one of the things that stuck out to me is intention with regards to those perceptions. Um, but then understanding like there's this whole like individualization component about things, right? Like so again, like what somebody saw as a tusk and they're like, hey, this is a wall, or somebody thought this is like a piece of art, right? Like really positioning, having a awareness internally, and then really being able to kind of position things with the different uh, possible perceptions in mind. And so, like, not only
Mhm.
thinking about, hey, I want to sell you something, but kind of
Mhm.
thinking about like individuals
Yeah.
is super crucial.
Now, do you think that it could be used for potentially, are there examples where this is used in a negative way? Like,
Oh, what was that documentary? The whole thing about Cambridge Analytica, like on Netflix. I forgot what that documentary was. Like I think
yeah,
that the whole reason that Facebook like shut down like political and like different types of medical, like some medical marketing, and they try to get like super strict, is because it was used in kind of like a negative light to like to shape perception, if that
yeah,
makes sense. And like I mean I don't want a lawsuit or anything, but I read this somewhere, so this is not like biblical fact, but there was word on the internet that like some Facebook in general was doing like testing, right, on timeline testing to say, hey, like, can we impact or influence people's day by like the types of content that we post in their feed, right? And so
yeah,
showing certain pieces of content in your feed and then checking or like listening for how you post that day. Like if I post all this negative stuff, does that force them to like post a negative status of like, this is how I'm feeling today, like negative words? Or if I'm posting puppies and kittens, like are they like, oh, today's a fantastic day in my status and stuff
Yeah.
like that? So looking at influence based on perception, I thought that was kind of funny. But I mean, I think it happens passively and actively daily.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have to agree with you too. I immediately thought of like a light bulb just went off my head because you had brought up Cambridge Analytica, but I think there's also another documentary regarding like constantly reinforcing like the same, like if you like kittens and maybe you're not a dog person, I'm just going to keep this pretty PG. Like you're going to constantly see kittens are awesome, like kitten swag, kitten, I don't know, like cups or something. I don't know, but like everything that's related to cats and like, and then maybe soon you'll say cats are just better than dogs because they
Yeah.
don't bother you, they don't need as much attention. And like soon you have this perception, you're like, yeah, I have to agree with you. Cats are awesome. And you're just getting this constant feedback loop. I know that was a really corny example, but I mean, it's the same. I think everyone can safely say it's kind of what we've seen over the last 2 years, especially with everyone being locked in. And so that's like your only way of kind of communicating with each other is having this digital feed. And so when you have these big companies like you know, Facebook, for example, it's just they have all this information in you and they just reinforce
Yeah.
this content to you. So yeah.
And I feel like they've been dragged through the mud a lot recently with all the
Yeah.
privacy
No, it's
changes.
not just them. There's all yeah. I feel bad. I shouldn't. Yeah,
You should pick on another platform.
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Hey, no, yeah. There, I was gonna say like there are. This is to say, if you are watching this, it's not just Facebook. There are a lot of other companies out there that will essentially ask you for your data. I mean, and kind of position specific content towards you, whether or not you're aware of it. And then that's something obviously we can talk further down the line with like privacy and everything. But you know that freemium, like
yeah.
the free document that you got, it's not really free. You're kind of selling your data, you know. So
Well, okay, so that's a really good point. So like thinking about kind of this theory
yeah,
and like how we shape industry practices, right? So we're all in marketing, right? And so
yeah,
like uh I feel like people have different viewpoints on a
yeah,
lot of things. Like, do we gate content? Do we not gate content? Like, what qualifies as like an AQL? Like, and like
that's
all these
true.
things. And then like we look for like we don't hold our own perceptions based on
Yeah,
our market. I
yeah,
think the bad thing that happens is like we're one of the other blind man, and we're like we have our opinion that this is like a piece of art, right? And that's how it
yeah.
feels to us. But like the man with the tusk may have like a more authoritative like quote unquote voice in the
Mm,
market or in the industry, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be the one who goes against him and says it's not a wall. And so like
yeah,
I'm gonna say it's a wall too, even though it doesn't feel like a wall to me. And that's like
yeah.
industry practices. Like, should we gate content? Like, how do we measure metrics and how are we tracking ROI? So I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Oof.
It's
Yeah.
a lot to
No, that's
unpack.
yeah. No, that's like it's kind of like a interesting position. You, yeah. It's. I guess it really kind of boils down to. I feel like marketing is one of those things where, yeah. I mean, we're kind of the blind man where we're pulled in many different directions, and we think that like what we're creating is what the customer wants, and it's like a you know, it's a sort of a science, if you will. Like
Mm,
you kind of try to test out your theory. You throw out if this format of like having gated content, for example, like is the right way to go about it, or does it make more sense to not gate your content, but maybe capture your customers' data in some other way? And like we see this kind of transformative effect, like in today's day and age where we don't we're slowly trying to like move away from like gated content because we also see that other folks in the industry are not doing it. Like something that I was and I know, and I apologize if I'm going off tangent, but like I see more and more like B2B is becoming more like B2C because people want to have so you know, if you were going on Amazon, you're researching like a product, there's a billion products, but you're not gated by the information. Like you can see all the reviews and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's the same way with like B2B. It's like instead of making to make you competitive in the field because there's a billion B2B, you know, companies out there, you stop gating your content and you're going to give your customer like all these reviews, the ability to kind of really play and feel like your product. As opposed to kind of keeping it away from them, like forcing them to sign up and talk to a salesman. It's like it's kind of removing that, you know, that layer, you know, that we used to do in B2B. And so yeah, that's my perception of it. And sorry if I went off tangent, but
No, that was all good. And I think it also relates, and you may have the same viewpoint to not only like being I'm gonna like stretch this metaphor as far as it can go. Like not only
yeah,
being on the same elephant and saying, hey, I'm seeing a wall um when I'm not, it's
yeah,
also even like jumping to the next elephant in the jungle or whatever, right? Because you're jumping strategies. And so like if you're like, for instance, a
ooh,
SaaS company,
yeah,
and like you have this strategy that's been working for you, but then somebody comes along, and then like a bunch of people pile onto this thing and they're like, no, well, I'm going to go over here to this other elephant. And you're like, well, I feel ridiculous staying here and like just touching this one, so I'm going to jump my
yeah,
strategy over there to, like, if
yeah,
it's like product led growth, or if it's like whatever it is, right? So the different strategy, whatever the new industry standard is. And so like everybody's piling on.
yeah. What point? 3.0 comp.
I mean, that's a
I know.
great example.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Last time we did this episode was like literally right before the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and
Shout out to the West
we
Coast,
all
the
watched the
Rams.
Super. Yeah, well, we all watched the Super Bowl, and we all saw a billion different and if like cryptocurrency exchanges. And so it was like it was interesting seeing how everyone's just piling on into this industry, might not necessarily know why, what it does, but it's the hot new thing and they want a piece of the pie of it. So
I'm
um
following that elephant because everybody is saying that's the cool one now.
yeah, exactly. Even though I don't like, you could be the blind man, but if everyone's saying, hey, I think this elephant just has gotten a little bit more promise, then you're gonna go where the voice goes, right?
Yeah.
You might not know what it is because you're the blind man. You kind of have to figure it out yourself, but
That's so funny.
yeah.
And I think it boils down to like we all think we are doing the right thing, right?
Mhm.
There are a lot of people, a lot of companies who are scared to be disruptors, and just because that's risky. We've seen a rise of disruptors in this whole like gig economy and like the Great Resignation. People are like leaving because they're like, I mean, I don't need to work here for $8 an hour, like when I can like sell t-shirts and make $10 a shirt, and like
Mhm.
literally it's passive income. I set up a web store and do all these things,
Yeah.
or I can get paid for my content. And now like even with crypto and web 3, I can, like, I'm an artist and I can sort of NFT like all of my art and then like get paid passively that way and stuff like that. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's interesting. And I mean, the thing is that's also very tricky. It kind of forces everyone to be with, especially with the gig economy, a little bit be more competitive, but um also just market their own skills and kind of realizing, you know, this is what I bring to the table. Um, Even myself, that's something I've had to struggle with. So, um, but yeah, I think it's really been interesting how there's this shift in because there's a lot more resources now on the market, having to really break the noise to kind of be seen essentially. Um, so yeah.
So do you have any thoughts then, just to kind of bring it all back to the original point? Like, do you have any thoughts around like how like brands or how people, entrepreneurs, whatever it is, can take that risk and like uh, feel confident in like their answer essentially to what they're feeling or what their perception is, or be able to challenge maybe organizational methodology to say, hey, like in everything that I'm seeing, like this isn't right for our company from a marketer standpoint. Like we should probably be
Mhm.
looking at this data. We should probably be doing this thing, instead of just agreeing with what the industry standard is because it's specific to our business. I would love to know if you have any thoughts on like on how people can do that, or like what would you do?
Hmm. Could you expound on that actually? I'm sorry. I
No, you're
yeah, yeah.
fine. And so like we're talking about like having different perceptions, right? So if you're a young
Yeah.
marketer and you're coming up in a
Mhm.
company,
Yeah.
let's just say it's a a like a hardware software reseller that was
Yeah.
primarily focused on Cisco. And they had a certain business model that the business
Yeah.
model didn't lend its ability to like marketing, right? They
Yeah.
like most of these orgs who are sales first don't
Mm.
necessarily even work with marketing. And so say you have an idea to come in and they're like, hey, this is how the markets work, this is how we've been making money.
Yeah.
um, how do you help to shift and change perception to say, hey, like we should be like going data driven,
Yeah.
and like looking at this thing and like these are how people are behaving on the site, or these are the systems
Yeah.
that we should set up and do that stuff. Like, so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, thank you so much for doing that, by the way. I just wanted to make sure that's what you were asking.
Yep.
That so this is going to be a very I think there's no really easy method to go about doing that, but I think it all boils down to perception and showing how you are a value asset to the company. Because I feel like historically speaking, there's always been that sales versus marketing. Like sales brings in the bucks, marketing actually brings in the bucks, and it's like this constant tug of war of like who is actually the person that should get the recognition. And the fact of the matter is that, I mean, they both should. And because they both like, you can't just go into just pure sales and zero marketing, because no matter how good your product is, it's not gonna get the capture that you want, like for the market. And so you're gonna have to do market to amplify your voice. You need both, and it takes two to tango. So that being said, to kind of go back on what I was previously saying, showcasing like your value prop, and the way that that is usually achieved is you know, giving that perception to, you know, your internal stakeholders, and over communicating and giving this a perception like you're on top of your stuff. And For example, like I've known some organizations that have been, you know, not you know, they thought sales and marketing should be completely separate, and that was usually because they never had any meetings, for example, and they did it like maybe once a quarter. And I know it's like it's crazy to think that, but like especially in today's day and age, but I mean, that's not how it is. That's not how it is anymore. So we have marketing and sales meet each other weekly, if not biweekly. It's really dependent on like the maturity of how, you know, how much sales buys into marketing and vice versa. I feel like if a relationship's not mature, they need to be as over communicative as possible, almost to the point of annoying, but still be valuable to each other, and make sure that each other's like visions are in proper alignment with each other. Because, you know, yeah, it's really important, I think, to over communicate, because once you establish that, you establish this perception of who you are as marketing. You're on top of your stuff, and then sooner or later you get other people in the organization who are like, man, they're really on top of their stuff. We want to work together with them. How can we make this thing better? And, you know, it just kind of has this compounding effect from there. So that's my long-winded answer saying alignment, communication,
I
perception, you
love
know.
your long I love your long-winded answer. And I think that there is a middle ground here to where, like, in this story, um if there was communication and if there
Yeah.
was an agreement upon the possibility that people can be like feeling and seeing different things, but then not only that, like, they were in pillars, right? They were in silos.
Yeah.
And so if they had put it all together, like, maybe they would have had a better understanding or idea of what it is. And so
Yeah.
I think the key thing for me, what I pulled out of this is that uh, if it's a sales-led organization, they can have their viewpoint, right? And they
Yeah.
can have their perception that it's a wall. But like, if you can bring in some sort of information based on the things that you were perceiving, and
Mhm.
like seeing, like, whether it's data, analytics, and stuff like that, and you guys can align, communicate, and like just bring the two things together. Maybe you're like, oh, holistic view, like, this is bigger than we thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh
so
crud.
so that's my
Yeah.
way of bringing it all together, and that's how it makes sense to me. So
Yeah, no, that's like 110%. That's yeah, no, because like sales sees some stuff that we don't know.
yeah.
And sometimes we see stuff that they don't know. And it's the same thing with like engineers, you know, ops, accounting, like, you know, it all boils down to communication and whether or not that's in your personal life. You know, if you're having an argument with your best friend or even with, you know, working in a business relationship, communication, it's how you influence each other's perception of each other and have this bigger picture, bigger perception.
And
Um,
I'm gonna stop right there because I'm not even gonna add anything to that. I think that's a great, like, a wrap. That's a great, like, ending statement. If we had any sponsors, I would throw the sponsor out right here and say, hey, this podcast is brought to you by X. If you want to become a sponsor, just please let us know,
yeah,
because I'm
give us
pretty
a call.
sure I'm pretty sure that Tony would love to have some passive income.
Yeah.
uh,
Who wouldn't?
and then throw it into the crypto market. So, um, but yeah, so yeah, this has been a really great discussion. I want to, like, wrap it up by saying, we should have said this at first, like, these are our own opinions, not reflective of our employer, and like we um we just like to get on here and talk about things that we're seeing, um, things that we understand from our vantage point, from our journey. So hopefully this has been valuable. And yeah, Tony, do you have anything else?
No, I just want to say, Quincy, you're rock star as always. I love talking with you. It's always a pleasure. And yeah, I thought today was awesome. I love hearing your thoughts, especially as a more experienced marketer. It's also funny how we kind of come to the same conclusions as well. You know,
Not
uh,
pre-planned by any
yeah,
means.
not pre-planned, but like Quincy said too, I mean, hopefully this was educational, slash informative, slash hilarious, or if you think we're crazy, that's acceptable too. Totally get it. But yeah, we're just here to have a good time, and hopefully you had a good time as well. That's our ultimate goal as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.